So this happened a few years ago to my fiance and I, while we were living at my mother's house for a little while we were in between places. It was nighttime during the summer, and we were out walking the dog and having a good time, as it had been oppressively hot earlier that day. Our dog was walking alone, enjoying his walkie time, and we were almost home. Suddenly, my fiance stops dead still and presses her hand against my chest to stop me from moving forward. I say, "What's up?" and notice my dog has stopped still, staring intently at something in front of my mom's place. She had this porch light which illuminated the lawn a little bit, and as my sightline went from my dog to the front yard, I saw, well, I don't know exactly. There was a humanoid figure on the front lawn that appeared to be dragging a large contractor-style garbage bag toward the backyard, which abuts the woods and leads down to a creek. It's vague to recall it now, but it was tall, seemingly dressed darkly, maybe in jeans and a hoodie, but it was only partially visible in the porch light. When I looked up, its head moved toward us, and it felt like it was staring right at us. The three of us were paralyzed in that moment, all filled with dread, until my brain decided to kick in. Just turn around and keep walking. My fiance and I turned directly on our heels, and thank God, our dog did the same. Both of us refused to look behind us until we turned a corner much further down the street. Our dog was stealing looks behind us, watching our backs. Once we turned the corner, we called the police, who came around to meet us and did a sweep of my mom's property, the surrounding properties, and the woods. There were 6 to 8 cops total that responded, with a canine unit too. It's a rich area of the suburbs. Here's the kicker though, and why I think this story belongs here. The cops called us back later that night, we weren't sleeping anyway, to tell us they had turned up nothing. No footprints or evidence of anyone on the lawn, no drag marks from the bag. Their dogs caught no abnormal scents in the area. My fiance was livid at them because we definitely saw someone there, and from that point on, we walk our dog with knives and a walking stick at the ready, just in case. As time has gone on though, I've begun to wonder if it wasn't a person we saw, but a thing. How else could it leave no earthly trace of its existence? When my eyes were on it, all I felt was fear, filling my every thought, such that I was paralyzed. And I wasn't the only witness, since my fiance and dog both saw it. And it was definitely dragging something along with it, which should have left a mark on the grass lawn. I've always been fascinated with stories of shadow people, wendigos, and skinwalkers, the latter two not being native to my area, allegedly. I do believe in ghosts, since we live in a house haunted by her deceased family. They didn't approve until I put a ring on it. Did we have a brush with the unknown that night? Or am I just failing to properly rationalize what we saw? So I've only had sleep paralysis one time, a little over a year ago. In the dream I was having beforehand, I was in my childhood home that I was terrified of. Many strange noises from our big woodsy backyard, but it was all fenced in with a large gate. I'm a very sensitive person, and I felt very strange, eerie feelings while living there, like cold spots, but nothing major. I ended up moving in with my grandparents. Anyway, in the dream, I felt like I was being hunted. It's fuzzy, but I remember a dark mass of energy that felt male to me. Also, there were blue lights, balls of energy jumping from different electronics like the TV and radio, with what looked like kind of a blue electric current that sparked and trailed from the ball for a second after it jumped out of the TV or radio. I ran to different rooms from the dark mass and attempted to barricade myself inside, but it would always get in. I tried to run to the front door. I grabbed the handle and turned the knob and pushed with all my might. It opened just an inch, and then there was an impressive force, not visual, that pushed back. I struggled with it for a minute before I decided to channel all of my energy mentally to push it open. It got halfway open and then slammed shut, and that's when I woke up. I couldn't move, As any of you who have experienced sleep paralysis know, it is terrifying. My breathing felt labored. As soon as it really sunk in that I couldn't move, which didn't take long, I hear whistling coming from the bathroom. My husband was at work, and I was home alone. Our bathroom is sort of a Jack and Jill, 2 sinks on either side, 1 door leading from our living room into the bathroom, and the bathroom leading into our bedroom. The whistling was a really creepy fucking tune. Although it didn't sound like it, the best way I can relate it is that feeling I got when Tiptoe Through the Tulips played on the movie Insidious. The whistling got closer to the door of the bedroom, and then stopped. The door was a little over halfway open, and I see something emerge, its body only halfway visible. It looked like a human man, an extremely tall man, almost the height of the doorframe. If I remember correctly, he was dressed in old jeans and a button-up shirt, wearing what looked like a straw hat, possibly cowboy boots, but my imagination may have filled in that blank due to the rest of the outfit. But his face was blank. There were no features whatsoever. It was just flesh, flat flesh, no nose or slight indentations where eyes should be. Even though he had no eyes, I could feel him staring at me. It was just a few seconds, I'm sure, after I took in this visual and it registered in my brain. I don't know if he felt it somehow, but this thing fucking smiled at me. The other part that I can't tell if my imagination filled in or not. Either the skin where his mouth should be pulled upwards and what would have been a smile far too wide and sinister, crinkling at the usual places on his face, or there was a visible one. But basically, the same freaky ass concept. After that smile, I tried to scream, ended up choking for a minute, and he was gone. I know it's similar to the Hat Man, but he wasn't all black, and not in a top hat, or the similar hats he's been known to appear in. Also, I didn't hear about the Hat Man until about 3 months ago. Has anyone had a similar experience? Has anyone read or heard similar experiences? I'm really curious to know. A friend of mine who doesn't have Reddit asked me to post this for her. This paragraph is copy and pasted directly from her Facebook. Okay, story time. Amidst my half-asleep morning dream state, I dreamt a huge white owl that was covering the moon with its wingspan, not flying, but just floating there. And it looked like you could see a black skeleton or something inside of it. The black figure came forward all of a sudden, and literally went inside of me to the point where I felt it, and I started choking, but I still couldn't wake up. And then, once I was able to compose myself in my sleep, the white owl flew literally so hard toward me and then inside of me that I shot up and out of the bed, ending up on my knees in the fetal position on the ground. I've been on Google for the past 2 hours, and I am still absolutely shook. I have never felt anything like that in my life. I think there's a fucking bird spirit inside me. I literally felt both of these things enter my body, and that's how I woke up, what the fuck? Has anyone ever experienced something like this before? So, today I was moving my shelf. I often thrift, and sometimes I thrift tribal masks, because, I think they look cool. Anyway, as I took down the shelf that held my 2 masks today, I noticed that there were some really weird markings on it. Straight consistent markings scattered throughout the shelf. They were absolutely not there before. Has anything like this ever happened to anyone else? Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I'm positive they were not there before I put the masks up there. I read many of the stories on your site and decided to tell one of my own. This is the scariest and most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me. First, I'll give a little background information. I grew up on a farm in rural South Georgia and spent a great deal of my free time fishing, hunting, and exploring, and always doing this by myself, since there weren't a lot of other kids around and I only had a younger sister. I never really experienced any fear of anything, other than being late for dinner, all the years I was growing up, and I can't recall any paranormal experiences other than the one I'm about to share with you. I had a best friend from school that I started hanging out with after we became old enough to drive and got our trucks, which are required for country boys. For the next 2 years, we did most of our hunting and fishing and troublemaking together. After we graduated from high school, we even went to the same local college and continued to hang out. My granddaddy owned a farm in the same county that we lived in, and I would go deer hunting on his land sometimes, but I had never taken my friend there with me. Behind my grandparents' house were several barns, then several large fields, then a large pond with a swampy area, then a large pasture that stretched from one side of their property to the other, property line to property line. This wooded area was immediately behind the pasture and also encompassed the entire backside of the property. The woods were also enclosed on the back and on each side with a 4-foot tall fence, since cows were allowed into the pasture and wooded area at times. You will soon see why all this detail is important. On the 3 sides of the wooded area were large open fields belonging to the neighbors, with each field belonging to a different neighbor. Take note that there are no more trees or woods close by. During the fall of our first year in college, I had scouted these woods and put up 2 deer stands, one on each side of the property on the property lines, but also very close to active deer trails and signs. These stands were no more than 100 yards apart, and about 150 yards into the woods from the pasture. I decided one weekend to treat my friend to a little hunting paradise, although I had yet to see anything other than squirrels all season long. We went to the woods about 4 p.m., with it being dark by 6. I took him to his stand and then proceeded across the woods to mine. Just after the sun went down, I heard my friend whistle loudly, obviously trying to get my attention. I whistled back. He whistled again as though he didn't hear me. Again, I whistled back, even louder this time. There was no response. About 5 minutes passed, and then I heard him whistle again. But he was closer to me than he should have been, but still through the woods somewhere. I found this very strange, since we were supposed to sit in our stands until after dark, and then meet up in the pasture to walk back out to the house. He whistled again and was even closer, and I could tell that he was almost running, and he started calling out my name. He sounded panicked and was coming straight toward me, although there is no way he could know where the deer stand was, since he had never been there before, and I didn't respond to him until he called my name. I climbed down from the tree stand as he approached, and when I got on the ground, he ran up and said, "We gotta get out of here. Something big is after me." Instead of joining him in the rush, I stood there looking and listening. Sure enough, in a few seconds, it sounded like a bulldozer was coming through the woods, but without the engine. I could hear trees breaking and large bushes being shaken and trampled, and it was coming right at me with the sound becoming deafening, as though it were right on top of us. I started running down the fence headed for the pasture, and realized that my friend had run ahead of me and stopped. When he saw me running, he took off running again. We ran as fast as we could through the woods with the sound of massive destruction right on our heels. As we broke out into the pasture and got about 50 feet from the edge of the woods, the sound stopped. We continued to run until we were halfway across the pasture and turned to look at each other as we ran, both realizing that either we were no longer being chased or there was just nothing to be torn and crushed in the pasture. We both stopped and turned around, dropping to the ground and shouldering our rifles, aiming to kill whatever was behind us. To our amazement, there was nothing there. The daylight was almost gone, causing the woods to appear as nothing more than a black blob. I told my friend to get up and run for the pond while I guarded the rear. Then he would stop and guard the rear while I ran to him. After meeting up again at the pond, we both walked in silence back to my grandparents' house. We got into our separate trucks and drove to our parents' houses, not mentioning the event until many years later. We still remain close friends then and even today, but we still don't know what happened in the woods that night. I did return to those woods a week later by myself, but in the middle of the day, I walked over the entire wooded area and never even saw one broken branch or bush. I walked in the fields around the wooded area and saw no large or unusual footprints. My friend never returned to those woods with me, even though I returned many times day and night, and never again experienced any strange occurrences or sounds. I know there was nothing physical in the woods that night, but whatever it was, I obviously didn't want my friend there, and he got the point loud and clear.